The Galactic Council had made their position abundantly clear. Humans were not to be trusted with the care of Zarakthi younglings. The Zarakthi were apex predators, 8-limbed behemoths whose adult forms could tear through reinforced steel plating with their crystalline claws. Their cubs, though smaller, possessed the same lethal potential. One wrong move, one perceived threat, and instinct would trigger a response that could prove fatal. Yet here stood Captain Yoshida on the bridge of the Endeavor, listening to his xenobiologist explain why they'd just allowed a 3-year-old human child into a containment area with 6 Zarakthi cubs. You did what? Yoshida's voice carried the weight of restrained panic. Dr. Chun didn't flinch. Layla wandered into the observation deck during my assessment. Before I could reach her, she was already among them. The observation deck had been converted into a temporary holding area for the cubs after their transport vessel suffered catastrophic failure. Their caretaker, a Zarakthi matriarch, had perished in the accident. The cubs, ranging from 40 to 80 kilograms of muscle and fang, had been inconsolable for 3 cycles. They refused sustenance, huddled in the corner, and emitted the haunting keening sound that served as their species' distress call. Standard protocol demanded they be kept sedated until transfer to a Zarakthi colony ship, but something about their grief had troubled Dr. Chun. These weren't mindless beasts, they were children, traumatized and alone. Yoshida pulled up the observation feed on his console, and his blood ran cold. Little Leela, barely reaching the knee height of the smallest cub, sat cross-legged in the center of the deck. Her dark curls bounced as she spoke in that peculiar sing-song manner unique to human toddlers. Around her, 6 pairs of multifaceted eyes watched with predatory intensity. "Get her out of there," Yoshida ordered. "Wait," Chun said. "Just ... watch?" The largest cub, the one they designated Threx based on the markings that identified him as the matriarch's firstborn, took a step forward. His chitinous plates rippled with colors that Dr. Chun had documented as aggressive posturing. His mandibles spread wide, revealing rows of serrated bone that could shear through muscle like tissue paper. Leela looked up at him and smiled. Then she did something that would be analyzed by xenopsychologists for the next decade. She opened her arms wide. "Hug?" she said. The word meant nothing to Threx. The Zarakthi had no concept of embrace in their language. Their species showed affection through chemical exchanges and choreographed movement patterns. But something in the gesture, in the absolute absence of fear radiating from this tiny creature, pierced through his distress. Threx's threatening display faltered. The colors rippling across his carapace shifted from aggressive reds to confused purples. Lila stood up, wobbling slightly on her toddler legs, and walked directly toward a creature that weighed 20 times her mass. The bridge crew watched in collective horror as she reached up and patted Threx's lowered head. "Is okay," she said with the absolute certainty that only a 3-year-old could possess. "Is okay, not scared." Threx made a sound not the keening wail of distress, but something softer. His chitinous plates smoothed flat against his body, a posture Dr. Chun recognized as submission and trust. Slowly, with a care that seemed impossible for a creature built for killing, Threx lowered himself to the ground and curled his massive body around the small human child. The other cubs watched. Then, one by one, they approached. "Someone stop this," Yoshida muttered, but he made no move to intervene. Like everyone else, he was transfixed. The cubs arranged themselves in a protective circle around Lila, their armored bodies forming a living fortress. Threx remained closest, his broad head resting near her shoulder. Layla, seemingly unconcerned that she was surrounded by beings who could end her life with a casual swipe, began to hum. It was a simple melody, something her mother sang to her at bedtime aboard the Endeavor. She ran her small fingers along Threx's carapace, tracing the bioluminescent patterns that marked his lineage. "Pretty," she said. "Pretty lights." The cubs' distress calls had ceased entirely. Their body language, tense and traumatized for 3 days, began to relax. One of the smaller cubs crept forward and rested its head on Lila's lap. Another pressed against her back. Dr. Chen was documenting everything, her hands shaking as she recorded. "Captain, I'm reading their biochemical markers. Their stress hormones are dropping. Cortisol analogs down 40%. Their parasympathetic nervous systems are engaging for the first time since the accident. How? Yoshida asked. How is this possible? I have a theory, Chun said quietly. The Zorekthi cubs recognize vulnerability. In their species, the young are protected absolutely. It's a biological imperative stronger than their predatory instincts. Lila, she's not just vulnerable. She's the most vulnerable thing they've ever encountered. And she came to them without fear, without weapons, offering comfort. On the observation feed, Lila yawned. Sleepy, she announced to her audience of apex predators. She curled up against Threx's warm carapace, using his massive forelimb as a pillow. Within moments, her breathing deepened into sleep. Threx shifted slightly, adjusting his position to better cradle the human cub. The other cubs pressed closer, their bodies forming layers of protection around her. Their bioluminescent markings began to pulse in synchronization, a behavior Dr. Chun had only seen referenced in texts about Zorekthi family units at rest. They were sleeping, all of them. For the first time in 3 days, the traumatized cubs had found peace. Yoshida stared at the screen, watching a 3-year-old human child sleeping in a pile of alien predators who should have seen her as either threat or prey. She had done what trained xenobiologists, sedatives, and carefully prepared protocols could not. She had simply been kind. The council is going to lose their minds when they hear about this, Yoshida said finally. Dr. Chun smiled. Good. Maybe it's time they learned what humans have always known, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is offer comfort to someone who's hurting. Even if they have claws. On the observation deck, Lila dreamed peacefully, surrounded by her unlikely guardians. And Threx, the eldest of the brood, kept careful watch over the small human cub who had reminded him that even in the vast darkness of space, gentleness could still exist. The predator slept, the child was safe. And humanity, once again, had proven itself to be the galaxy's most unpredictable species, not through violence or conquest, but through the fearless compassion of a 3-year-old girl who simply wanted to help.